Good morning again. Thanks for venturing out in this terrible blizzardy winter storm, the snow-apocalypse this morning that just has almost overwhelmed us here with such a dusting of snow. But it's kind of nice to get it on the new year, to kind of get a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit to start it all off. Hey, I'm kind of excited. Today we're actually kicking off a brand new series where just for this month we're going to take kind of a real quick look at some highlights of what we would call the Adventist faith, sort of our understanding of things from the Bible that we're Christians at the core, but we have some variations, and you probably are already aware of one because you happen to be in church on a Saturday. So if this is new to you, welcome. This is one of our kind of things. We're actually going to talk about that today because for us as Seventh-day Adventists, what we've come to understand over the course of the life of our church is that that relationship with God is important. And God has even defined what that relationship looks like. And even though at times we have gotten it wrong and lots of other Christians have gotten it wrong about what that looks like, because for some reason at times we have thought, you know, if I just do all the right stuff, if I just do the good stuff, if I get it kind of all straightened out, then God's gonna like me. He's gonna accept me. But I gotta do my part in order for it to get Him. And we've gotten that all kind of wrong. And so today I want to go back to kind of talk about what God did when he talked about defining the relationship. Because it's throughout the Bible. But for some of you, when you hear this term, define the relationship, the hairs in the back of your neck stand up a little bit, and you get a little cold sweats. Because at some point, now how many of you have ever had that moment in any kind of relationship, you know, specifically in a dating relationship, when you had to define the relationship? Anybody else? Right? You know, guys, we're about 5 weeks out from Valentine's, and if you've just started dating somebody, you're going to have this discussion by Valentine's Day. Trust me on this, all right? But, you know, it's defined. You know, they'll sit down and they'll say, I just need to know where we're at, okay? What are we? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend? Are we just dating? Are we just having fun? What is it? Because I need the relationship to be defined. And oftentimes for guys, ladies, I'll give you an insight to us. When we hear those words, we go, oh no, because we hadn't really thought that far. We're just kind of, you know, going on. We don't really plan all this kind of stuff out in general. And sometimes, you know, you run into people who want to define the relationship, and you say, well, yeah, I think we're going out. And they say, well, that's good. Let me give you the ground rules, right? Every Friday, I'll give my female boys, every Friday, I won't do that because my wife will get mad. I have it around my house, and she said, when I sort of mimic what she has said to me, and she says she doesn't sound like that. In here it sounds like that, Lori. So, but you know, yeah, let's define a relationship. I'm glad we get a chance to do it. You know, here's what it's going to be. Every Friday, you're going to bring me flowers. Every Friday. And if you're going to be dating me, you need to know exactly what I like. What are my favorite things? So you may want to write this down. Get out a pen, write this down. You know, pay attention. Oh, by the way, I don't really like the clothes you wear. You kind of got to get something a little better, you know, and get a little fixed up, and you may even want to lose a little bit of pounds. But we'll work on that because, hey, we're boyfriend, girlfriend now, right? This is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great, you know. And oh, by the way, every Saturday, you got to spend all day with me and focus on me completely, do everything I want. This is going to be great. I'm so excited. I can't wait till I tell all my friends, right? And if you happen to be in a relationship that's what it looks like, here's what you need to do. Here in about 10 minutes, you need to act like you need to go to the bathroom. And you just keep going, all right? Little free advice today, all right? But sometimes we get that idea about God and this whole idea of His commandments, and it's about all the things He says. You got to do this in order to be with me. You got to get all this stuff right, just right. Follow all this stuff, and then maybe if you do a really good job, you know, I'm going to do some good stuff for you. I'll do good stuff for you as long as you do good stuff for us, for me. And at some point, we have totally missed what the Bible is really about. This idea of grace. See, grace is not a New Testament concept. It's not an exception to the rule. It's not something God came up with later after plan A didn't work and was kind of scrambling and said, I guess we got to do this because nothing else seems to work. In fact, if you will read your Bible, and this is another reason why you ought to read your Bible, if you will read your Bible through the lens, through the understanding of grace, you will see that it starts in the garden and it goes all the way through. But somehow, when we hear about rules, we all have this natural reaction. When you hear about rules, especially ones that you are going to have to kind of work on, you aren't going to fit so great in your life, you kind of go, I'm not so sure about that, right? Some of you may have new rules at your office, because it's a new year and we're going to start new rules, right? Post them up on the doors, and some of you are like, yeah, that's right, I don't want my coworker, bringing to his cubicle that stuff, he's an immigrant and he's got that flavor that comes, and I'm glad we're getting rid of no eating at your cubicle. That's good news, and you go through all the stuff that you really like, and then it has some stuff that you don't like where you park, and you're like, really? What are they saying to me? How can they be that way, right? There's something in all of us that sort of resists this idea of rules, and we have made this whole thing about rules. When God has defined the relationship from the very beginning, we're going to look at some passages today that will, again, remind us of how he's defined it. But let me remind you again of something very important. If you're not familiar with the word grace, let me explain what it means. Grace simply is getting what you don't deserve. That's it. Getting what you don't deserve. So when you mess up, when you run that stoplight, and the camera flashed, and the weeks go by, and a letter does not come in the mail, that's grace, right? When you come home and it's been one of those days, because we all have one of those days, right? And you just kind of, you're not feeling good, you're kind of grumpy, and your spouse says something to you, and your kids say something to you, your dog says something to you, and you kick him because you can't kick the other ones, but you can kick the dog, right? And the dog comes back, with those eyes, and your kids still bring you something they just did today, the picture they drew at school, and you say, what is it? Because you have no idea what it is, but then you go, oh yeah, and your spouse, says, hey, you probably had a hard day, just go sit down for a little bit, chill out, and listen to music, read something, turn on TV, whatever your thing is, and I'm going to take care, I'll get dinner tonight. That's grace. And we always get in trouble and have gotten in trouble in this idea of faith and religion and Christianity when we have forgotten how important grace is. Because grace is really all about relationship. It's more than a theological term. It's about who God is and how God lives and operates. So before we jump into a couple of passages today, I would invite you to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Father, I just stopped today to ask you, again from my own self and my own struggle with this idea of grace and my work ethic that drives me to want to do something, to earn something, to feel like I've contributed to something. And I just pray again today that you would remind me through these words that are 2,000 years old, that grace is how you have always operated. Even in those times when we don't understand what that looks like, that's always your default, always your go-to, always the way you handle things. And so today, I just ask, again, that you'd be in this space, in this place. And I pray especially for that person in this room today or who's watching online today who needs to understand this better, who needs to understand this in a way that literally will change their life. Because they've tried all the hard stuff, they've tried to work, they tried to do all the good stuff to be better, and it just hasn't worked. And so today I ask that your grace would not just be enough, but that it would be enough. In your name, amen. Hey, if you want to follow along, we're going to start over in 1 John chapter 2. If you're not familiar with the book of 1 John, it's one of a number of letters that this guy named John, who was one of Jesus' closest friends, one of his disciples when he was here on this earth, and he's actually, everybody expects, this is probably one of the last things that was written in the thing we call our New Testament. So really late after everybody else. And as John, as he writes these things, he's writing letters to people that he has been a pastor of. So here's this old pastor who's sitting down writing these things, trying to encourage people, sort of maybe one last time or one of the last few times he might get to. And if you have the chance to read 1 John, you'll discover here's this guy who's pouring out, and he kind of bounces back and forth. He'll say one thing, but then he'll kind of cover in another way. And in fact, here in the second chapter, he starts off this way by saying, My little children, I write this letter to you so that you will not sin. Now, if you've come from a church background, especially a pretty conservative church background, you say, I understand that. I'm not supposed to sin. That's clear. I've been told my whole life, don't sin, don't sin, don't sin, and here's how you don't sin. Do all the commandments, do all this kind of stuff. Just do the right stuff. But what John is writing about here, he's writing to people he cares about. And he's writing to say, because he recognizes the impact, and you recognize the impact that sin has in your life, right? Right? Yeah, we get a little back and forth. That'll help me, all right? I mean, I don't have to go into all the details, do I? Everybody in this room, everybody watching online, has experienced the effect of sin in your life, right? Your sin, other people's sin. We're clear about everybody else's sin, right? And how much it's messed up our lives, messed up our world. Had another occasion yesterday in the news, right? Down in Fort Lauderdale Airport. One person's sin, one person's failure to treat other people well has changed a bunch of lives. And so when John writes that, that's where he's coming from. He's saying, listen, I'm writing this to you so that you won't sin. Then he makes this incredible statement. But if anyone does sin, which I love because John, as he writes this, is saying, Chip, I don't want you to sin, but Chip, I know you. And that's not a knock on Chip because I could put another name. I could put Seema's name in there. Put Dave's name in there. I could put Dave's name in there a couple times probably. Yeah. But he's saying, listen, the goal is not to, because you know how it hurts you and it hurts the people around you and how it comes this way. But if you do sin, recognizing that that's sort of a thing that we do as humans. We sort of, we're like NASCAR drivers. Great at turning left, not so good at turning right. And our default is to go left, right? We go left and get off track. But if anyone does sin, he makes this an incredible statement. We have an advocate in the presence of the Father. So if you mess up, you need to know something. My little children, John writes. If you mess up, you have somebody who's there for you, standing in the very presence of God the Father. And he's your advocate. He's on your side. He's standing there going, yeah, I know Dave messed up again, but, I said it twice, Dave, so I kind of cover you there, right? But he's mine. And as much as he's done these things and hurt this person and said that stupid thing, I know that's not where he really wants to be. And so I got him covered. Because notice how he finishes. Now, the person in the presence is Jesus Christ, the one who does what is right. That is the righteous one. The righteous one who's always done what is right is still doing what is right in the idea of grace. And that's when your name gets called up, and for some of you, it's a regular feature every day, every hour on the day, right? And Jesus is standing there again saying, you're correct. But the right one says, grace treats you differently. And you need to understand that because where John's going to go. John is saying, listen, I'm for you, and Jesus is for you. He died, that is Jesus, in our place to take away our sins. I mean, that's his goal, to get it out of our lives. And not only our sins, but he makes this incredible statement, but the sins of all people, that is the whole world. That when Jesus died, he didn't just die for the people that said, oh, I want some of that. He died for everybody. All times. And we need to know that because sometimes it's, we kind of think, well, I'm not really good enough to deserve it. There's a reason for that. Because that's true. Because you can never do enough to deserve it. And that is not the point to trying to do enough. It's about recognizing that I can't, and I need to come to grips with that can'tness. But he's died for our sins. That's why he's our advocate. But not just ours, he's died for everybody's sins because that's just how God is. It's not just for my people kind of thing. This is for my people in the sense of everybody kind of people. And then he writes, he doesn't write this. This is my throw up there. See, grace is the basis of our relationship with God. It's the basis of our relationship with God. Not the things we do or the things we don't do. It's grace. It's getting what we don't deserve is the basis of our relationship with God. Some of the best marriages I know are two people who are convinced that they lucked out. As the guys say, they outkicked their coverage, right? You know, she's better than I should have ever deserved. You know, she's like a couple numbers up on this number scale of wherever I thought I should be. You know, she's up here. And if both of them believe that kind of thing, you have a great marriage. If only one of them believes that. We'll come back and talk about that next month. Here we go. Listen, as John has set this up and says, listen, I don't want you to sin, but you do sin. And when you do, you know you got an advocate. You got Jesus is right there by the Father saying, I know, but he's mine, she's mine, they're with me. It's all kind of good, and he's died for us. He says, we can be sure that we know him if we obey, that is, keep his commands. To which we go, yeah, you kind of lost me here, John. Because this sounds like, buckle down, get tough on things. That we're talking about how that's all good and grace covers up. But what John is telling us is something that's so easy for us to miss. And that is, for some of us, we have this desire, how do I know that this whole faith thing is real? How do I know it's doing something in my life? And John says, you know it's doing something in life when your life changes, when you start doing stuff differently. Not in order to earn something, from a basis of grace, that I'm already there with that piece. We can be sure that we know him if we obey, that is, keep his commands. And then he makes this incredible statement. Anyone who says, I know him, but does not obey, that is, keep his commands, is a liar. The actual language there is this idea of a falsifier. And you've all run into falsifiers in your life. You know, you're talking to somebody, having a conversation, and everybody's kind of, you know how stories go. One person tells one story, somebody else tells another story. You tell another story, the stories kind of keep getting better. You mention people you know, famous people, important people, and they throw out some names, right? Because everybody throws out names to feel better about it, right? Oh, I know so-and-so. But if they don't know so-and-so, they're really a falsifier. But we kind of get caught up in all this stuff. And as John writes these words, he's saying, listen, you can't really know God outside of a relationship of obeying, that is, keeping, that is, observing the things that he's talked about. There's something in the knowing and the observing part. How do you know you can drive a car? Is taking a test convince you of that? How do you know if your future spouse can cook? They watch enough of the cooking shows, does that convince you? They finish the meal and they step back away. The only way you know if you can do something or not is by actually, right? And that's what he's talking about here. We can say we know all this stuff about God. But if it hasn't come into part of our lives of doing stuff, it's really gotten off track. And our problem is we have made the doing part, when I do it, it's saying I know it. And the actuality is, no, it's a relationship thing. The only way you really, when you do stuff, that's how you get to know somebody deeper and more clearly. I don't want to embarrass you guys, so I'm not going to do this out loud, all right? I mean, I'll do it out loud, but I don't want you to respond out loud, all right? If I didn't do it out loud, you'd be like, yeah, so if somebody asked you right now to list your spouse's or your girlfriend's top 5 likes, yeah, I'm going to leave that alone now, all right? But when you do stuff, you know stuff, and it's in the doing you know, as opposed to, I'm not sure, I'm kind of guessing at all this kind of stuff. And John is saying, listen, folks, you can't really say you know God if you're not kind of committed to him, if you're not kind of letting this seep into your life, if you're not following what he's asked, even when it sometimes doesn't quite make sense, there's something about kind of pushing yourself. And some of you have had this experience where you've pushed yourself and done something you're convinced you ought to do because God said I was supposed to do it, or I felt like I ought to do it. I don't know why I'm doing it, but after I did it, it was like, oh, now I understand. Now I get it. Because John will go on and say, listen, if somebody obeys, that is, keeps his teaching, then in that person God's love has truly reached its goal, been fulfilled, or completed. That if somebody actually kind of lives this stuff out, there's something that takes place. There's an understanding that changes. It goes beyond just simply doing stuff and observing stuff, keeping stuff, to now I understand why I'm doing what that is. And in fact, we're going to look at just briefly at kind of the start of the Ten Commandments back in the Old Testament. And what we'll discover is there's a reason for all those 10 pieces. And the reason is so that we'll treat each other better. And that we don't let anything get between us and God. And it's not just simply in the doing that it does, but it's in the doing that we can know that if we're open to knowing that. Because John will simply say this: the knowing is in the doing. This is how we can be sure we are living in him. Now, I mention all this stuff because if you've been around, you know that I was not raised in a religious home. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian by choice. Some of you are not necessarily by choice in one sense. In my early 20s, I became a Christian, and Seventh-day Adventist, same event for me. But there's something about when you've kind of had it always around you, that you just do stuff because it's what you're supposed to do, and it's easy at times just to do what you're supposed to do and miss the meaning behind the stuff that we're supposed to do. And I think it's one of the reasons that sometimes people don't understand why we keep the Sabbath. You know, you can go down the other list and you go, yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense not to kill somebody, not to steal from somebody. You know, makes sense to take a day off if I can squeeze it in my schedule, but come on, right? But the Ten Commandments do not stand in contrast to grace. They are given within the story of God's grace. Sometimes theologically, sometimes in Christian history, we have made this battle between grace and law. You've probably heard this if you've been around, right? Grace versus law. As if they're opposites. Grace and law are not opposites. The opposite of grace is gracelessness. You're not having grace. And the opposite of law is, I see you guys are smart people. You know what the opposites are. Grace and law aren't the opposites. Other things are the opposites. In fact, I'm convinced that law is actually an extension of grace. In fact, I'm going to prove it to you. If you have a Bible, want to zip over there on your phone or something, Exodus chapter 20, the very beginning of the commandments. Roughly 2 to 3 months after God has stepped in this incredible way and brought this group of people who, by the way, he came along and said, that group back there in the back, raise your hands. About 20, raise your hands for me. Play along. Yeah, you're just like the slaves. You don't really understand. But yeah, okay. Those are my people, all right? And I'm getting you out of all this mess over here, right? And they're like, okay, because they've been in slavery for a few hundred years now. I mean, they're just, you do what the boss tells you, and that's it. Keep your head down, work. They don't know who God is. They've lost sight of, when Moses goes, remember, out in the desert? When Moses says, by the way, God, who am I supposed to say? Told me to come and tell Pharaoh, this great king, let my people go. Got to have a name, because you can't just say, you know. Of course, God says, I am. That's a whole other story. But there's this piece of saying, this happens, and then God actually follows through, and they have this miraculous thing. They come out of Egypt, and the people get chased, and there's this miraculous thing that opens up the water and closes up the water and all that kind of stuff. And it's like 2 to 3 months later that God gives them the law. And he gives them the law at that moment. Not in order to establish a relationship with them, because he has already established that relationship. He has said, you're mine, and you're coming with me, and I'm going to make it happen. And so as he begins the list of rules now to this group of people that have all they know is sort of slavery, don't really understand this idea of rules and how we're going to govern in freedom, how we're going to treat each other, he says, listen, I want to remind you again that I am the Lord your God. I'm the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt where you were slaves. I'm that person. I'm the person that's redeemed you. I'm the person that's rescued you. And we've gone for a couple of months now, and I haven't said anything about what my expectations of you are. Because you're already mine. And because you're already mine, I need you to know some things. Some parameters, some rules. And you know why I need you to know that? Because I want you just to get along. You know, I don't want you taking somebody else's stuff. I'm going to go down the list. I don't want you to have any other gods before me or around me or besides me, because that just gets confusing. And they came from a culture that chased after gods. You know? We wanted to have a good crop this year, you better convince the God that takes care of the crop. You know? Want to keep your enemies away, you better convince the God that takes care of your enemies. You know? And God says, you get so confused. I just want you to have me. And I don't want you to make anything that kind of represents me, because it's just so easy to sort of put me in a box. And when you put me in a box, you think you're in control. And you're not. And that's a battle we still even battle today, isn't it? And he says, listen, you're my people. I'm your God. And I want you to take that for granted. You know, don't think that's important. Because if you don't think that's important, you're going to get into trouble, and the picture you're going to give to other people is not going to be a great one. We have the Sabbath, I'll get to that in a minute, but he talks about honoring your parents. How many of you who are parents would love to have your kids honor you? See, well, I'll laugh about that because they're like, oh, you know, they don't honor me. They just take my money. But I mean, when I talk about honor, and it's not you walk in and they go, oh, Father, thou great and high, you know. That's what you're looking for. That's not what it's about. But the idea of respect, and not just respect because you're new, but the idea of respecting who you are and what you've provided. Roof over their heads, you know, a bed, a food, all those kinds of pieces. To care for them, especially as they get old. And God's saying, this is the kind of culture we ought to have, where we take care of. You know, and we came from a culture where when somebody got sick and old, they got rid of them because they couldn't produce. And we're not going to be like that. And I don't want you to steal other people's stuff, because it's their stuff. And you won't like it if they take yours, and if you take theirs, they're going to want yours, and it's going to go back. It's not going to be good. I don't want you murdering anybody, because you murder somebody, then they got to revenge and get you back. And go back and forth, and you're taking somebody's life, and I don't want you screwing around, because that never goes good for anybody. Some of you know that. Don't want you saying false stories about people to either make yourself feel better or to get yourself out of some situation. And I want you to be happy with what you have, instead of looking at all this stuff everybody else has. I don't want you to do that because you're my kids. And maybe that's the best way that we can understand this whole idea of laws and commandments and rules, is to understand it in the context of your kids. See, I have never once had the rules for my neighbor's kids. Didn't call my friend up and say, hey, Jose, how's little Jimmy doing tonight? You know, it's about 9:30. Is he in bed yet, you know? Because he should have been. Did he get his homework done, you know? You know, they come over to play with my kids. I didn't say, hey, do you kids get your homework done before you came to play? None of that stuff, right? Now, for my kids, I had rules. I had lots of rules, all right? Do you know why I had rules for my kids and not for other people's kids? That's right, they weren't my kids. But for your family, your kids, you need to have rules. Because rules communicate something. Psychologists, sociologists, all the people that study all that kind of stuff will tell you that a child raised in a home with no rules thinks they're not loved. They need somebody to say, don't, even though they won't like it, There is something that communicates to them that somebody cared enough to say no. Because if nobody ever says no, then nobody really cares for me. And so you have rules. And kids, you may not like your parents' rules, but they have a rationale for it. May not make sense to you now. To make your bed every day. Oh, why, Mom? I'm just going to go back and do it tonight. Trust me, there's a reason. Just do it, all right? But to brush your teeth, comb your hair, put deodorant on, especially when you get about 7th or 8th grade, please start putting that stuff on, all right? And they're doing it not because they want to be mean. They're doing it because they know they're trying to establish habits in life that are going to be good habits. They're going to make your life better. They don't want you meeting some little cute girl or some little cute boy and having your hair all sticking up and smelling bad. And they're like, it gets around the school. It's just not a good thing. Parents have rules for their kids because they care about it. But here's the thing, though. Your child is not your child simply because they obey the rules, are they? Your child is your child because they're your child. That's right. This is not rocket science. But we made it something else. All these rules I got to commit. No. These rules were given to a very specific group of people, those that God had said, you're mine. And now, 2 or 3 months later, after I've already convinced you that you're mine and I'm taking care of you, I'm providing everything you need, now you just need to know what it's going to look like going forward. See, the law wasn't given as a condition of relationship, but as a confirmation of that relationship. And we have gotten it so much out the other way. We've believed that the law was given as a confirmation of relationship, that I keep it, it confirms my relationship, and so it becomes, a way to get my condition of it. And that's why, in the midst of those 10, he will make the statement about the Sabbath. Remember, to keep, that is, to consecrate, to sanctify the Sabbath holy. Only one that God says remember, so it seems like he maybe understood that this would be a tough thing for us. And this is not just being about convinced that this is the right day to worship on. This is about something greater and deeper. This is about the nature within so many of us to squeeze in more and more and more in our lives. To say, I can just work a few more hours. I don't want to be sitting home while somebody else is working. I got to be out. I got to be producing. I got to do stuff. And God says, that's not how I want my people to be. I want you to remember it, to make it something kind of special. And here's why. I want you to work and get everything done during 6 days each week. Knock yourself out for 6 days. But the 7th day is a day of rest to honor, a Sabbath to the Lord your God. This is a you and me thing God is saying here. It's not a you and everybody else. This is a you and me thing at this moment. And you do it to honor me, not in the sense of, honor, 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 but the sense of recognizing I'm your dad. And we have this relationship. And I want to spend time with you. A little sidebar, free extra credit today. If you are, I can't talk about moms. It's probably a good idea for moms. I'm just going to talk about dads. If you have a kid that is entering those tween years, you need to start having a date night. If you have more than one child, spread it out. 1 week is this child, 1 week is another child. Go just spend some time with your kids, all right? It's an investment. And it's an investment of this idea of helping them honor you because you're spending time with them, but you honoring them by spending time with them. Free bonus today, just threw that in, right? On that day, that 7th day, that Sabbath, no one may do any work. And this is where we get a little cringy. Oh, I don't like nobody doing work. But God's saying, listen, nobody's supposed to do it because you are not just your work, even though your boss believes it. You're more than that. And then he has this incredible list. Not you, not your son or daughter, not your male or female slaves, which I love. He's including everybody in this, right? He's not just saying the guys, you get the day off or you women keep working. No. Treat everybody. Your animals, even your animals. Or I love the last part, the foreigners. Those resident aliens. Those people that keep coming across the border, taking our jobs, even them. Give them a break. And the reason is that in 6 days, The Lord made everything. That's the sky, the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. And sometimes when we hear that, we think, oh, that's the reason. It's about honoring God. No, the reason is God made everything. And you didn't make anything. That's the reason. And on the seventh day, because he'd made everything, he rested. With the idea being, are you really better than your dad? Because if I rested, you could rest too. So the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy, that is consecrated. God did all this because he knew from the very beginning we would have a hard time stepping back, taking a little bit of break in our lives. That we would keep cramming more and more and more stuff and squeeze out not just him, but squeeze out relationships. And the commandments, if you look at them, are all about relationships. It's Jesus' summary of them. What do they represent? Loving God with everything we have, loving those around us like we'd want to be loved and cared for. See, the 10 weren't given as a condition of God's approval and acceptance, but as evidence of his approval and acceptance. And when we get those wrong, we get everything wrong. But if we see them as just simply, this is what it is. This is what a good family does, is they have rules, they have regulations, they have stuff you do, you have jobs to do. It's a part of how families function. In fact, Jesus would put it this way. The Pharisees had come along and said to him, why are your guys out there picking stuff up today? They're supposed to be not working. Why are they going through the grain fields and harvesting grain? They weren't harvesting grain. They were just getting some stuff to take a snack, It wasn't like they were out there with the machines and chopping stuff and then, grinding it all together and putting it through water and baking stuff and doing this and then putting it in the trucks to go deliver it. That's not what they were doing. But as he was getting a pushback from them, he said, guys, he tells them a story about David, which is an interesting story. I don't have time to get into today. But his summary of it all is simply this. The Sabbath was made for people. It was made for people. It was made for us. Not that we were made for the Sabbath day. And again, anytime we get that mixed up, we mess up so much stuff. When it becomes all about the day and keeping the day and having all the regulations, and I can't do this and I can't do that, I can't do this and I can't do that, I can't do this and I can't do that. I guess I can nap because that's rest. Yeah. When he said, no, this is a day for you. When you make it about anything else, you miss the whole purpose of it. And then Jesus makes this incredible statement, if you understand the context of it, when he says, listen, so then, because it was made for people, the Son of Man is Lord and is Master even of the Sabbath day. And he says, basically, his point to them is, listen, I can tell you what the day is supposed to be about because I'm the one who made the day at the very beginning. And so when I say, that's not it, you need to believe me, that's not it. So let me wind this thing down. Why Sabbath? Because that's one of the things we as a Seventh-day Adventist version of Christianity know about. The Saturday, the Sabbath, right? And I have a very simple answer for you. Some of you have been around an Adventist church long enough now, you got to kind of cringe again. Oh, because God said so. No, that's not my because, all right? I just threw that up for a laugh, right? Oops. I knew that was going to happen. Because we need it. You need it physically, because if you go 7 days a week for too long, you are just going to wear yourself out. And that doesn't do anybody any good. You need it spiritually. And it's not just the rest part. You need to be reminded on a regular basis, you know what? This is not about me. This is not up to me. This is really about trusting God. The Sabbath is really created for that. It's remind us again that I can try to produce everything I want in 6 days. I can try to produce it in 7 days, but I still can't do it all. It's really a faith statement that says, you know what, I believe that in 6 days I can do whatever I need, and God will make up the rest. Because he's big enough to do that kind of stuff. We also need it for the people around us. Because what I love about that command, we looked over to Exodus 20 there, right? What I love about it was that this isn't just for you as God's child. It's for all that other group of people. Your kids, your slaves. So those of you who are slaves, take note of that. But your employees, your animals. So if you have a cat, give your cat the day off today, all right? We're down to one cat, and it's like Sabbath every day of the week for that thing. And for the foreigners, those immigrants, those people that are out there working, if you have the ability to give them the break, give them the break. Because this isn't just about for us, this is about helping others. Experience some break. Experience a little bit of grace. Giving them what they don't deserve. See, I'm convinced you cannot experience God and His grace fully outside of a committed life to Him. And what I mean by that is not that you can't experience grace, but you can't experience it fully outside of a committed life to Him. That's what John writes there in 1 John. If you say you know God, obeying is a part of that connection because it helps you know Him in a different way, in a better way, in a deeper way than if you just do your own stuff. I love how Andy Stanley sums it up. He says, God takes full responsibility of the life fully devoted to Him. And so as we wind this thing up today, my question for you is, what would your life look like if you made that step of giving Him full responsibility of your life? If you became fully devoted in the sense of saying, okay, I see these commandments, and it's not about, I got to keep them, but it's about exploring them, about living them out. It's about observing them in a way that really gets to the essence. Well, this is how I represent my Father. This is how I represent my family. This is how He has decided is best for me. Make my bed, brush my teeth, get a job. But what would your life look like? Just for the next week, you fully committed it to Him. And let Him take full responsibility for it.